flying. Now you have to realize that if I put 65 feet out there, even up where Gibson ends, it's going to look like a postage stamp that far away. So if you try to go in, let's say 30 feet, which is like on the Bradbury City Hall picture, that's nice if you're driving up to the gate to have a pole like that, but it won't have any effect on something so far away. You know, it's pretty hard to compete with Mother Nature. I built the flagpole for President Nixon's summer White House. I furnished over 900 flagpoles, the '84 Olympics. We did the Squaw Valley Olympics, 3 World's Fairs, Seattle World's Fair, New York World's Fair. We actually had an office in New York. In Canada, the Edmonton Northlands. I had poles Solomon Island, the North Pole, believe it or not, Alaska. I have flags flying, one on the Mariner that ran into Mars, and the Orbiter, which I asked JPL, how long do you think that'll last? He says about 1,000 years, so I said, I hope our label holds up. But anyway, I just wanted to tell you that I live here. Most of my work's in Southern California. However, in during the bicentennial, 1974, 75, you'll know notice on Main Street, just west of Nugget, there's a building there that used to be a bank, and it's a building where they give money for registrations, things like that. I furnished that pole that's in the back, and they never fly an American flag on it because it used to be a bank. And that pole's about somewhere between 55 and 65 feet tall. I remember packing it up and shipping it up here. And when I moved up here, I go by there and I thought, you know, that looks familiar. Well, one day I drove in there, and when I saw the spun collar at the base, I knew it's my pole because nobody else makes those like that. I tell people, you know, I do work for most of the cities in Southern California, the city of Duarte's, city of South Pass, and so on and so forth, Bradbury Estates, Newport Beach. I have poles at hospitals all over the country. We opened up Disneyland. We were the official holiday decorators for Disneyland up until the late 70s when they took it over. I knew Walt Disney personally. I used to decorate his tree in his apartment above the fire station. When you go down to Disneyland, you'll see my work out on Harbor Street, Catella, and so on. The poles in the center of the road, the maps, all in bronze castings, are 6 foot square on the corners in the sidewalks. I opened up Magic Mountain, the tower there and all.
Thank you. Do you want to make a proposal, or what's? I've seen your work.
I don't know where to start with you people.
Okay.
I did meet with this fine lady. And
let me ask the board what their pleasure is.
Personally, for me, I thank you for coming. And I didn't know you lived here. I've seen your face around
I met
town.
you.
Yeah. And
it's
so
groundbreaking.
Yeah.
You're from Pasadena.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. I'd like to see if we can be able to just take a look and see if you can connect with staff, and then just see what the process is. I don't mind having staff have a conversation with you.
Okay.
Will?
I'm happy with that, to direct staff to look into it. Sure.
So, yeah, and
I just had a question. Was part of your, or are you proposing moving the pole that is not used outside of the previous bank facility, or that is not what you were proposing? I was unclear on why you were bringing that up and pointing out that it's around roughly the height that you would recommend for a flagpole.
You know, height is gauged on how much you can afford. The tallest pole I put up in Orange County was 167 feet tall with a 6 foot flying eagle, gold leaf, eagle, copper. But, you know, I don't expect your type of facilities to spend that kind of money. I mean, you have more important things to spend on. But if we're going to fly the American flag, it really should be the highest, most prominent point of the property and place of honor. And that's
Well, thank you.
I'll leave it at
What
that.
Yeah, what we're going to do is going to refer it to Dennis, and would you come back with, after you have a chance to talk to our guests, and what the process is too, whether it needs to be, you know, the process of looking at it and bidding it or whatever we have to do, because we're a public agency, and then bring that back at a future meeting after you have a chance to meet with this gentleman. Okay?
Be happy to do that.
Thank you very much for your
Thank you.
presentation.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Move on to item number 4.
Yes, so...
Any
board-
other public comment? That's first of all. I think we're good. Any staff comment or board members comment? Okay, staff?
Yes, so Chair Davies and board members, I have a very brief update for you on the supply project. Just cover briefly the financing and funding update, tell you a little bit about the construction activities, touch on operations, and then the total project cost update. So I think as the board members know, we have been pursuing $40.2 million in grant funds for the joint intake. We have now secured all of those funds. The federal $20.1 million has been in place for some time. We were awarded a Prop 1 grant from the state of California for $8.1 million. That grant has now been executed, so the state's matching contribution of $20.1 million is now in place. The non-grant funded portions of the project are being supported by low-interest loans. Woodland has a loan for $111 million. We've submitted $99.4 million to date and have received $96.2. Similarly, in Davis, $83 million submitted and $80.7 million received to date. The submittals lag the actual construction process by a couple of months, so we have some remaining submittals reimbursement requests for the treatment plant that CH2M Hill built, and then we have some additional submittals that will come from the joint intake for the non-grant funded portion of that project. In terms of construction, the operations period for the CH2M Hill service contract began on June 29th, so we've been delivering water since June. All of the design build work under the service contract is now complete. All the punch list is done, all the certifications and requisitions and documentation is in place. West Yost, our engineer, has confirmed the completion of the project, and so on your agenda this afternoon is an action for the board to consider acceptance of the completed project. Joint intake project. All major construction activities are nearing completion. The remaining work is primarily associated with completing the removal of the old or the existing intake. The completion is dependent on the weather. They have to be able, the river and the Conway Canal has to be sufficiently low so they can get in and secure the old conduit that went through the levee. The agency's pumps at the new intake have been in service since September 13th, and they are performing well. The remaining contract items at the joint intake project include negotiation of remaining change orders and resolution of outstanding claims. I've listed the 3 primary claims here. Hard driving, the contractor claims that he encountered hard driving when he drove the foundation piles for the structure, and the claim amount is $3.7 million. Also a claim for additional foundation work at the RD 2035's outlet structure, $400,000. The contractor has indicated there will be a charge for if they have to demobilize and then remobilize to complete that work. If they can't get into the river for a significant period of time, they'll have to demobilize and then come back. We don't know what the value of that claim will be, but we've been told that there will be a claim for that.
Dennis, a process for adjudicating those?
We have, there is a process that we've already initiated for the first 2. We did go to a mediation to try and resolve it absent, a legal proceeding. We were not successful in that initial attempt, and we're looking at additional opportunities to have a conversation outside of the strict legal process to see if we can't get that resolved. But the initial attempt at the mediation was not successful, and we have not gotten any dollar amount on the last item there yet.
Thank you.
So this is just a picture of our pumps that are, as I said, been operating since September. They're finished. You're putting the finishing touches on the architectural treatment for the building. And operationally, switch now to the operations of the facility. The treatment plant is currently producing about 10.5 million gallons a day, about 5.5 going to Woodland and 5 million gallons a day going to Davis. The plant continues to meet all regulatory drinking water requirements. The monthly reports that are due to the Division of Drinking Water and the agency are being submitted in a timely fashion. And CH2M Hill continues to try to optimize the treatment process to minimize chemical use and electrical use. We have had some occasional instances of discolored water. So in Woodland, they've been experiencing events on and off since last summer. In Davis, they've not received any abnormal complaints from their customers, but the city crews did find discolored water in one part of their service area. We retained experts several months ago now, and they initially suspected that the problem was being caused by legacy manganese or deposits on the inside of the distribution pipes. So they recommended that the cities go in and do some flushing in those areas. Cities did that. That had limited success. So in terms of these events, all of the treatment regulations and service contract requirements are being met. The issue is really an aesthetics issue. But the cities want to and are conducting additional sampling and are proposing to engage, the agency is proposing on their behalf to engage additional experts to identify the cause and come up with a solution to resolve the problem long term. And that recommendation is calendars as a separate item on this afternoon's agenda. And lastly, this is a slide that we've shown the board for the last year or so. This is the total estimated cost for the project, the regional cost. That's the facilities that the agency is responsible for, has a projected cost of $204.5 million. When we get to the budget update in a few minutes, we'll go through how we're doing this year, but the bottom line in terms of how much we're going to spend on the entire project over the last 5 years is this 204.5, and we're not recommending that we adjust that figure. That looks to be a good figure at this point, even with the issues yet to be resolved. We're fairly confident that we'll come in at or below that number. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Do you have any questions? No? Will, do you have any questions?
Thank you.
We were updated by our staff on the coloring, discoloring, and appreciate the efforts of the agency and the staff to try to resolve that. It is kind of isolated to certain areas of our community, and I know that it's something that we have to solve. So we'll be working on it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yep.
I had a question back in the beginning here that I have marked and overlooked. Had something in reference to the Conway had a letter under public comment with regards to how the water rights. It was a letter in your packet that you sent out. The water rights were described, and I didn't see a response to that. And so I was just trying to make sure I understood that.
Yeah, that, if I'm understanding
Yes.
that correctly, that was a comment that came in relative to the urban water management plan. And so we have revised the urban water management plan to address those questions. And in your packet, when we get to it, you'll see that there's a line-out, strikeout version that shows the changes we made to respond to those comments.
Thank you. That's the only question I had. Is So we're ready to move to item number 5, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, so we had scheduled a presentation and a public hearing, and then board deliberation and decision. I don't think we have anybody here for the public comment, and so I think it would be the board's choice as to whether or not you would like a presentation or whether you would like to start your deliberation now.
Mr. Shanahan, what do you suggest?
For the record, you should simply open the public hearing, acknowledge that there's no commenters, and then move on, and then the opportunity is for a staff report, and then the question is, would you like staff to go through a report summarizing the urban management plan, or do you just want to move on to it, consider its adoption?
Thank you. Can you hand me the club there? I'll do that. Thank you. At this time, the board will open the public hearing on the urban management water plan. Seeing no public present, we will close the public hearing, and I will ask the board their pleasure with regards to the presentation. Do you want a presentation on this management plan? Would it help you understand it, or would you like not to have that presentation as a board?
The presentation, I've looked at it. I think it's good work. I'm ready to move the item.
I'm fine. I'll go along with Will, although I would actually enjoy a presentation. But you guys are voting and I'm not, so.
Yeah, I kind of want to see it, guys, so if you don't mind, I'd like a short, abbreviated chance, you know.
We got a very
and
short
I think it's good for us to take that and look at it. I started to read through it, and it was too much for me. So if you can just give me a quick brief, I'd appreciate that very, very much. Thank you.
We will do that. I need to figure out how to tee it up here. There we go. And there we go.
Okay.
Now I need to figure out how to put it in.
What's the PDF?
I'll go to view and go full screen.
Wow.
Okay, so let me introduce Monique Day, the firm of West Yost Associates. West Yost prepared the plan, and so asked Monique to make the presentation.
Yes, hello. So we'll just give you a quick overview of the Urban Water Management Plan. The agency is a wholesale agency, and so it's a little different than if you were involved in the Woodland Urban Water Management Plan or the City of Davis Urban Plan. So I'll go to the next slide. So just quickly, we're going to go over what's in an urban water management plan and then the actions that the agency took. Next slide. So in general, urban water management plan, it's a long-range water planning tool, serves as a foundational document, helps ensure that there's adequate availability and reliability in normal single dry and multiple dry year conditions. And this urban plan documents the supply and demand conditions through 2040. And it's a requirement of the state. There's the Urban Water Management Planning Act that requires agencies that supply water to 3,000 customers or more than 3,000 acre feet. So as a wholesale agency supplying more than 3,000 acre feet per year, that you're required to do that. And as a new water provider, you're required to start start submitting your urban water management plans within a year of operation. So you started in June last year, so yours is due June 2017. But then it's going to need to be updated every 5 years. So the 5-year cycle with DWR is, we just had the 2015 round, and next is going to be the 2020 round. So in the year 2021, you'll probably be submitting your next urban water management plan update, but this is your initial plan. And by adopting your urban water management plan, now you will be eligible for state grants and loans. So that's another incentive to have this adopted. So this is a very simple graph just to show you that we are showing in the urban plan the supplies and the demands, and basically we're showing that they are equal because the cities are demanding a certain level of capacity from the treatment facility, and the agency is supplying those. So it's basically 30 MGD is the supply and the demand. And then in the year 2035, the plan is to expand up to 34 MGD. So that's all this is showing, and they don't exactly match what's in the city's urban plans because their urban plans include all of their supplies, so their groundwater and surface water, whereas this is just the agency's surface water that it's providing. So the approach that we took for doing this is, as a wholesale agency, we referenced the City of Davis and Woodland urban plans as much as possible. They are consistent in their numbers. The demands are defined as the treatment facility capacity that's allocated to each of the customers, so Davis, Woodland, and UC Davis. And so that's how it's defined, even though we do recognize that the actual demands may be less than what we're showing in that bar chart in the previous slide. And we also recognize in this plan that the agency supply may not be sufficient to meet all of the customer demands at all times, and therefore the cities each have plans to either use their native groundwater or ASR or recycled water, whatever their sources are, and the agency reserves the right to purchase supplemental water supply if needed. So that is acknowledged in the document. So in order to comply with the Urban Water Management Planning Act, the agency provided a 60-day notice to the county as well as each of the cities that's within its service area. So we did that back in August, and then the agency made a draft plan available for public review and comment in December, and that was much longer than the required window of public review, which is like 2 weeks. And then on top of that, they provided the hard copies available at the agency office, and it was available on the website. And then in addition, as required, they also advertised this in the Daily Democrat and in the Davis Enterprise. So we've checked all the boxes, and you're in compliance, and the next step is just to adopt the plan. So we've done the public hearing, and the next step is to adopt. And I just want to clarify that the recommendation is to adopt it with the recommended changes. So there's a version of track changes in there for chapters 6, 7, and 8. Next slide. And so once you do adopt it, then we'll submit it to DWR. So we'll upload it to their WUI data website. We'll submit a copy to the California State Library, and we'll notify the other stakeholders that we had sent notices to, put it on the website, and the agency will keep a copy in their office as well. So,
do we have any questions?
I do.
Yes, we do. Thank you.
I have a few. So I understand that UC Davis's share of this project is very, very small relative to City of Woodland and City of Davis. Did you look at all at anything UC Davis was planning or our water action plan? Did you need to, or is that
no? It was all based on your allocation, and so we just recognize your allocation is 2,000 acre-feet per year and left it at that. Yeah, we did not go into any detail on what the university's plans are.
Okay, and then when you provided the 60-day notice, 8 other nearby agencies and stakeholders, was UC Davis one of those?
Yes.
Okay, I'll catch up with you later to find out where that went.
Yes, and there's a copy of it in the appendix of the urban plan that's in the board packet, so you can find that there.
Are you okay? I'm good. Yeah, okay. Any other comments or questions? No. So then, as I understand it, we need to adopt this, is that correct?
Yes.
And so we need a motion.
So I'll move the item.
It has been moved and seconded to adopt the resolution regarding the Woodland Davis Clean Water Agency Management Plan. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you for your work. We move on to agenda item number 6.
I'll cover this one. For the board, this is a big day in the life of the design build project. The service contract that you have with CH2M Hill requires that upon final completion, the project needs to be accepted by the board of directors, and staff is here today to make that recommendation. The design build period of the work has been completed. Staff and the engineers have confirmed that CH2M Hill has achieved final completion as defined in much detail in the service contract. And we're now before you with a proposed resolution that would confirm that CH2M Hill has satisfactorily completed the work. You accept the work on behalf of the agency, and you authorize the general manager to make the final design build payment to CH2M Hill and staff. And then following that, assuming the board approves the resolution, staff then would record a notice of completion with the Yolo County Recorder's Office. Staff recommends the board adopt the resolution. Any questions?
Questions? Questions? You sure? Huh?
I'm sure.
Okay. Okay. Can we have a motion, please?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Is there anyone from CH2M Hill here specifically? Okay, well, thank them all for their work. I mean, this is a big day. It's pretty exciting.
Okay, thank you. We move on to item 7.
Yes. So with the completion of the design build portion of the contract, we had historically or previously been tracking changes through a change order process, which is typical with a construction project. Now that we're into the service or the operations portion of the service contract, we've developed a new process we call a service contract amendment that we will document changes that are needed or recommended as we go forward in the operations of the project over the next 15 years. So we have 2 that we're bringing to the board for consideration this afternoon. The first involves the installation of a redundant seal water system, and let me describe that briefly. When the project was originally designed, our pumps, the agency pumps, need seal water for the seals on the pumps 24/7. The seal water had no redundancy. It was a single well. We actually experienced a failure of the pump in that well several months ago. The engineering team and the operations team got together and decided that we should have a redundant or backup seal water system to that single system that we have now. So the first contract amendment is to design a redundant seal water system, prepare plans and specifications for that redundant system. The second contract amendment involves additional assistance from CH2M Hill's technical and project management startup team. They have been overseeing the work at the joint intake. This is for the work at the joint intake. They have a vested interest in making sure that everything is done properly and fully completed and working correctly, because when the project is finished, they will be the operator of that joint intake. So we think it's in the agency's best interest to have 2 of their people part-time for the next couple of 3 months involved in the closeout and documentation process at the joint intake. And that is the purpose of the second contract amendment.
Any questions, John?
So you anticipate that there will potentially be other contract amendments down the line during operations? These are just 2. We're changing how we change.
Right. How we document and approve changes to the service contract during the operations period. These are the only 2 that we're aware of right now, but should
potentially years from now there could be another one.
Yes, and we would use this same process.
Okay.
Or propose to use the same process.
Other questions? Angel? I have a little question on understanding, Dennis. Now, it's an 80-20. We have 20% of the interest, and I guess Conway has a larger percent of the interest in the intake. And there's the intake operation, and then there's the actual treatment plant operation. So 24/7, 365, who's on duty? That's my question all the time, because we got a big investment here.
We're on duty for the agency's facilities, which is the agency's pumping equipment, electrical gear, and what we call the common facilities, which is, for example, the fish screens, and the security of the site. That's what CH2M will be responsible for. The one thing they're not responsible for is the operation and maintenance of the RD 2035 pumps.
And how will we accomplish that? Are we going to contract that out? Are we going to, as on here, we said we're not going to have any employees.
That's
documents.
CH's responsibility. It's
CH2
already
Hill is
in
gonna
their,
be
it's already
responsible
in
for
their
that.
contract to do that.
Thank you. Good. To make clear that I know where they are, so we have any problem, we'll go get them. Okay, any other concerns or questions that we have? I'll turn to, yes. So we have two, I got to get back to the right page here, number 7. So we have 2 items to adopt, is that correct?
Yes, the staff recommendation has a recommended motion combining both contract amendments in one recommended motion.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Number 8, review and confirm adequacy of the capital and operations budget for the fiscal year 2016-2017. Item number 8.
Has been the agency's practice for the past several years is to do an assessment, the review of the budget mid-year, and check in with the board regarding the adequacy or the need for any changes to the budget. So let me get this to the right view.
Full screen.
There we go. And so there's a detailed report in your packet that goes through the analysis, but let me just say at the outset, I have a few slides to show you, but the budget's in very good shape, and we don't see a need to increase the budget. In fact, in the operations budget, as you'll see, we're recommending a reduction. So just by way of reminder, the capital and operating budget, approved budget for FY17 is $30.26 million. Staff has reviewed the expenditures through November, projected expenditures through December, which is halfway, and then again projected the expenditures for the remainder of the year. On the capital budget, the primary reduction includes $3.4 million for the joint intake due to Prop 1, the anticipated receipt of the Prop 1 funds, and the return of $6.5 million that we lent the project until those funds were received. Not included in the projections were the claims that I discussed earlier, the hard driving claim, any remobilization charge, or any change orders that haven't yet to be identified. Primary budget increases are $685,000 for the design build portion of the CH2M Hill contract. It's not an increase in their cost, it's simply a shifting from one fiscal year to another. We thought they would spend more money last year and less this year, so the money was shifted into this fiscal year. The overall DBO contracts are within budget and on schedule, as I discussed earlier in the project update. And there is a $215,000 payment to CH2M Hill for the remaining retention that they're owed, that we've been holding on to until they finally completed the project. So in conclusions, the FY17 capital approved budget is sufficient to cover expenditures. We're projecting that we're going to do a little bit better in a number of categories, so we're recommending or moving $2.6 million into the contingency fund, and we're hoping that that's going to be sufficient to deal with the claims and any outstanding change orders that we discussed earlier. And then once those issues are resolved, any remaining funds would be reallocated back to the cities. On the operating side, primary budget reductions really deal with the fact that less water is being ordered than what was projected at the time the budget was set up. So the $265,000 is a reduction in the fixed portion of the contract. That's actually in the contract. It's tied to essentially CPI. So those numbers came in lower than what we projected. So we're going to spend $265,000 less as a result on the fixed portion of the contract. The next two are related to the efficiency and decreased water demand, $767,000 for electricity and $240,000 for pass-through chemicals. And the last one, reduction of $2.1 million for the Woodlands portion of the SRF fund and $4.1 million for Davis's debt payments. Those payments don't go away. They just shift to next fiscal year. We were able to get the contract completion extended from last December to next December, December of 2017, allow us to capture all of the costs that are going to be incurred primarily on the joint intake. So by moving that construction completion date a year, it pushed out those debt payments a year. So the only increase that we've identified in the operating budget is the $167,000 that you just considered and approved for those two first capital modifications, the CO water and the additional CH staff time. So concluding on the operating budget, we were able to move about $1.3 million into contingency, bringing the total of the contingencies in the operating budget to 1.7. I do need to make a correction here. One of the things that we forgot to include in the planned expenditures was the $390,000 replacement and recovery fund that Paul explained earlier. We have to fund that in the budget, so this total will actually be $390,000 less than the 1.7 million. And then it's recommended that we reduce the operating budget by $6.2 million due to the delay in the debt payments on the SRF loans in both Woodland and Davis. Any questions?
Questions? Well?
So do you need us to vote on this, or is this just informational?
Yes. We need.
It's a recommended action item.
You know. The question that we had earlier, Dennis, that you referred to in the, you talked a little bit about some claims against the agency for unanticipated costs. How do those fit into the operating capital budget? Because I know they're not adjudicated yet, but where do you anticipate those fitting?
Well, there's really three categories. So there's the two claims that we know have been filed, and there's a dollar amount attached to them. There's a anticipated claim for mobilization, demobilization that will largely depend on when they're able to get in the river and do the work. We don't know how much that claim will be, but we're anticipating something coming in. And then the third category are change orders that have not yet been negotiated fully, where they've submitted a change order request, and the engineer and the project manager on the joint intake project are reviewing them for proper documentation and costing. And then I get a subcategory of that is anything else that were to come up in the next few months as they close out the project that's not yet been identified as needing a change.
And the resources for those, what would be the?
When you mean, I'm
well,
sorry,
it sounds to me like we're going to have some additional expenditures or additional claims.
Yes.
Now, where in the?
Well, we have with the adjustments that I just described on the capital budget, we have $4 million in contingency, and we're hoping that that will be enough to pay for these claims and change orders yet to be resolved.
Thank you. I apologize, I'm just trying to catch up, okay? So you have to bear with me a little bit. Thank you very much.
Ms. Camille?
Any other comments from Paul or anybody on this side of the room?
So I did, to follow on your comments and questions, Skip, the 4.1 that you're holding in contingency is a pretty direct match to the existing claim, the two claims that we know what the amounts are. Are you expecting to negotiate those claims down, and then that contingency will cover all of these unknown, to be determined, potential remobilization and other change orders?
we're hopeful that that will be the case based on what we know. Some of these costs are very undefined at this point. I will tell you that during the mediation session, we presented our position that we thought that the claims were highly inflated, and that conversation will continue. So we're hopeful that it's going to be significantly less than the 4.1, but we haven't reached agreement yet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. So we move on to a long-range calendar.
No, I need to move the item, which
You want to move that item to the
take that as me doing so.
Confirmation. All right, yes. Okay. Thank you for the motion to accept the mid-range report on the budget of the fiscal year 2016-2017. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
So this next item, 8.1, was added recently to the agenda. This deals with the discolored water events that I described earlier. In working with the two cities and making sure that we're well coordinated with the agency and with the treatment plant, it was thought that a single contract under the agency's direction to bring on additional experts to study the problem more carefully, do some additional sampling, analysis, trending, jar testing, perhaps some pilot testing would be beneficial to both cities. So we're proposing that the board approve a contract with the agency, or allow me to enter into a contract with Confluence, as a firm out of Washington that has been engaged on the project and has provided some useful help and assistance so far. And then in turn, when we finalize the negotiation of the contract with Confluence, we would also ensure that costs are properly allocated between the two cities, so that if Woodland wanted to do a test or an evaluation solely related to what's going on in Woodland, those costs would be assigned to Woodland. And similarly, if a situation were to arise where it was a Davis-only investigation, then we would assign those costs to Davis through the contract.
Any questions on that? Thank you. Any further questions?
You need a motion for this
calendar?
one?
Yes.
Good.
Because there's an expenditure. So I'll move the item.
Been moved and seconded, the long-range calendar, and all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. Further comments on number 11?
The last item in your packet is the long-range board calendar. We have our next quarterly meeting is scheduled for April 20th in Davis, and then our June meeting in Woodland on the 15th. Don't have a lot of activities identified for April at this point. In June, the primary focus will be the consideration and approval of next year's budget.
Thank you. Board member comments? Comments from the university?
And Chair Davies, one additional thing I'd like to add before we go to the Technical Advisory Committee is I wanted to let the board know of my plan to retire from the agency around July 1st. They're not a hard date, but I've talked with the Public Works directors and let them know. I'll be working with them on a well-thought-out succession plan, and would like to plan to bring that back to you at the April meeting, so that you can provide additional direction on how you want to proceed. And I don't want to speak for Lenan, but I think Lenan has a similar intention around July 1st to retire from the agency.
Dang.
Do you need approval from us for that?
No, yeah. Because you're not going to get it.
I don't think Will's making the motion on it.
Substitute motion.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we'll look forward to that celebration, as well as
Sure.
some follow-up ideas and processes. Any other business to come before us? Motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. The meeting be adjourned. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.